Hey guys, and welcome to episode 15 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Here we go.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
So guys, hope you're well, and we're back with episode 15, really on a roll now. So today's episode is with Dr. David Kennedy. I actually shot this interview a little bit before in the year, but the sound quality wasn't good, and with the information coming out, I feel so important to get it out to you. I wanted to shoot it again and make sure the sound was A-OK, so everyone can really get to know all this information really clearly. So Dr. David Kennedy is a dentist. He's been a dentist for going on almost 3, maybe 4 decades now, and he's a specialist in fluoride and mercury. And as we all know, fluoride is good for us, right? That's why I put it in the toothpaste. That's why I put it in the water supply. We'll have a little chat with Dr. David Kennedy about this. I know my thoughts on the topic, and we're going to mercury and fillings, and we even touch a little bit on root canals, etc. So without further ado, here's Dr. David Kennedy, here's the interview, and guys, as always, let me know what you think afterwards, because you are who we do this for. So, without further ado, here's Dr. David Kennedy, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Revive Yourself podcast. Today's episode is with Dr. David Kennedy, DDS. David's a dentist, and has been so for, I think, 47 years. We've actually did this interview once before, but unfortunately the sound quality wasn't where we wanted it to be, and the information he's given out is so vital that I want you all to be able to hear it. So, David, welcome to the show once again. How are you today?
I'm very good, Ryan. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the program.
No worries. How's California today?
Sunny and warm.
Sunny and warm. That's just how you like it. So today we'll just be talking about fluoride and mercury. David has actually got a film out called Fluoridegate, which I urge everyone to watch on YouTube. And he's also got a film out called Smoking Teeth, which is on YouTube, all about mercury. So he is an expert on these two topics, and he has been lecturing on these for years now. So just for the people out there listening, David, how did you get into researching and lobbying against mercury and fluoride and lead, etc.? Because these are things that most dentists prescribe every day to protect and strengthen teeth, or actually to revamp teeth that have been broken.
Well, I had an experience with mercury when I was in the United States Navy in the 70s. I was supposed to try to clean the place up, and the standards we were using then were we were trying to get the offices down to 100 parts per million. Today, if an office gets to 100 parts per million and you're wearing a respirator, you have to leave and return in a spacesuit. 100 is considered immediately hazardous to your health. So I watched that whole progress of, it's not enough to hurt you, to, get out of here, it's going to kill you. So, that it became pretty obvious that what I was taught in school was not, what the occupational health and safety people believed to be true about mercury. Fluoride was a little longer, took me a little longer to figure that out. The scientific literature is the way I make decisions. But when I was challenged, I wrote a chapter in my book, and I was challenged by one of my peer reviewers to support some of my statements. And when I went to the literature, there's no support for swallowing fluoride. None. Even the advocates today say it works topically. Well, if it works topically, why are we putting it in our water? It's not going to have a chance to do anything except, I don't want water that's so toxic that it splashes on the teeth and makes the germs sick. So anyway, it was 84, I think, was when I turned around on fluoride. So, and there are a lot of things wrong with dentistry. And the problem is it doesn't use science. It uses tradition. So, if it was for a religious celebration or something like that, fine. But tradition doesn't work with science. As they like to say, just a little teeny bit of data will ruin a perfectly good theory. And so the theory that fluoride's good has been shot down seriously.
Yeah, I know you guys have had it in the water supply for a long time. And I know it's something that we'll actually get onto that later. So we'll start with mercury, because mercury is still something that is used daily to put fillings in teeth. It has actually, I think, been banned in Sweden and Norway, maybe a couple of other countries, but definitely them. So why do dentists use mercury, and why is it so toxic?
Two different questions. Dentists use mercury because it's cheap and easy to use. And the big reason why they use mercury is because they're taught to. Is that if you were an airline pilot and you were taught to, go in and, dance a little jig down the aisle before you took off, all the pilots would get on the airplane, dance a little jig down the aisle, and then go take off. If they're taught to do it, they're going to do it. And that's the reason you have an army of dentists out there stuffing mercury in everybody's teeth every time they get a chance. They don't know anything about toxicology. They have no clue that they're poisoning themselves, their patient, and their staff, and the environment by sticking this mercury in every mouth they can get open. So as long as you allow trade associations to determine the curriculum of the school, you're going to get the trade association teaching students to do what the trade association needs to have, better profits, I think.
Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I've actually got here, it causes degeneration. So, I've read before that even one atom of mercury is too much. And this is something that is put in someone's mouth and it's off-gassing all the time. So what sort of diseases or illnesses can come of this? Because it sounds like it's just a recipe for disaster.
It is a recipe for disaster, and that there was a National Geographic article a number of years ago, 77, that was called "A Perfect Pesticide for Man," and it was all about mercury, liquid mercury.
Really?
The mercury attacks the central nervous system of higher animals, and so it interferes with the way the brain functions. And so the diseases that are related to mercury are Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, for sure acridemia, which used to kill 5% of the infants in England when they used mercury as a teething powder. Acridemia, and the non-lethal form of acridemia is called autism. Lou Gehrig's disease, which is ALS, where mercury accumulates in the spinal cord. Parkinson's, where you sit around and shake, and tremor is one of the classic symptoms of mercury. And that they're all of these diseases have some other component. That doesn't mean that mercury isn't one of the principal ones. But for instance, Alzheimer's, the genetic makeup of the individual is very important. Is that if they're APOE4, they're at high risk of Alzheimer's. If they're APOE2, they're not. And that the APOE system is the excretion mechanism for mercury. The 2s excrete it real well. The 4s don't excrete it at all. So, we know all of this. The dentists don't know any of it, and they continue to put mercury in people's teeth. And that when I went to school, I was taught that the mercury was not released. That was not true. It was not true in the 1960s. It's not true in the next century, and they're still saying it. And now they're saying, oh, it's just a little tiny bit. Well, yeah, but if you measure the little tiny bit, it exceeds the level that is known to harm, the minimum risk level. So, I don't care if it's a little tiny bit or a skosh or a dab. Don't do it. It's not appropriate for dentists to be putting time-release poison fillings in people's teeth.
100%. I've actually had a dentist say to me before, "Oh, it's toxic. It's toxic, but when you put it in someone's teeth, it isn't toxic anymore."
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah, and I was thinking, how does that work then? And I asked him, I said, "Can you explain yourself?" And he was like, "Well, because it's in the tooth and it's not allowed to. It doesn't evaporate or anything." And I was like, "That doesn't seem to make sense. That's complete nonsense, correct?"
It is complete nonsense, and I have a video. You can video the smoke of mercury coming off the tooth at 253.7 angstrom light, And you can't see mercury vapor, but under that kind of lighting condition, you can see the shadow of it. And so smoking teeth is actually showing you everything you do to the filling makes mercury come off, but you don't have to use that. You can use radioactive mercury. A guy named Freckholm back in 57 put radioactive fillings in his fellow students' teeth and showed that radioactivity was coming out in their urine in the next day. You know, it's there's no support for the claim that your dentist gave you, and it's unprofessional, it's unethical for professionals to lie to their patients. They're taught what he was telling you what he was taught in school. And so he's basically perpetuating the myth that mercury is somehow locked into the tooth when the filling is made. That is not true. That was not true when they came up with that story. It's still not true today. It's a fake safety thing. It has nothing to do with safety. Is that you can't put a time-release mercury filling in a tooth and not expect that mercury to spread to the fingernails, the hair, the teeth, the brain, the kidneys, the liver, the heart. And, you know, it's just insane. So mercury is, you asked why it poisons. And that the reason mercury poisons you, it's what's called a heavy metal. It loves sulfur. And that people don't realize it, but there are many, many things that are very important in our body made out of sulfur, including the insulation that covers all the nerves in the brain and the peripheral nervous system as well. And that sulfur is then attacked by mercury, and it ends up holding the mercury instead of holding your nerve, and you end up with nerves with no insulation. Well, what do we call that? We call that MS. And where do they get the MS? The MS is wherever the blood vessel crosses the nerve, and that's because if you got mercury in your teeth, you got mercury in your blood, and then when the mercury goes by when the blood goes by the nerve, the mercury jumps off out of the blood into the nerve and starts stripping the insulation. Well, if you had a rat that got into your parked car and started eating the insulation, when you get out and try to run that car, the lights aren't going to come on, the radio's not going to work, and you're going to have a lot of trouble running that car. The same thing's true of human beings. If something's stripping the insulation off your nerves, you're going to have trouble running your body. You're going to have trouble with your memory. You're going to have trouble with your motor. Motor neurons are not going to fire properly. You're going to end up with tremor. And that's what dentists do. They've measured dentists, and dentists tremor. There's a number of studies. You mentioned Norway had prohibited the use of mercury fillings, and that's because of a TV special in 2008 about the mercury poisoned dental assistants. And the dentist said, oh, that's not possible. There's hardly any mercury at all. Blah, blah. It's a safe kind of mercury. And the University of Lund measured all these ladies, 400 and some odd of them, and they were all mercury poisoned, including some people that had birth defect children that died. So you can't listen to the dentist. They don't know anything. They were absolutely incorrect on 400 more of their dental assistants. And so Norway, they went all the way to the Supreme Court in Norway, and Norway said, we can't have people using products in this country that are poisoning the staff. It's unethical. It's immoral. And they stopped it. And I think every country in the world should stop it. But thank goodness we have some leaders. Sweden said in 1987, from a toxicological point of view, dental amalgam is an unacceptable material. Now, the dentists are trying to spin that into environmental concerns. Well, yeah, it damages the environment, but that's not what they said. They said from a toxicological point of view, it's an unacceptable material. And that was 1987. Isn't that 30 years ago? How come things move so slow? It's because the trade association that's making money off of this deal gets in the way, and they raise alternative theories. It's like if some fella ended up stabbed in the back, that when the lawyer comes in to defend the client for, that fella fell down the stairway and accidentally stuck himself in the back with a knife. So they offer an alternative theory, and somehow the public thinks an alternative theory is the same as, something in the scientific literature. They don't have anything in the scientific literature where they've actually exposed people to mercury and not found harm, including the horribly unethical children's amalgam study in Portugal, where they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that putting an ordinary number of mercury fillings in children's teeth damaged their kidneys within 5 years. 5 years. Well, how many people have damaged kidneys in this world? Lots. 13% or 11% in the U.S., I think, have kidney impairment. How much is that from mercury fillings? We don't know. But we know that if you take a child who is pristine and had no mercury in their body at all, and you put mercury fillings in their teeth, within 5 years, you got kidney damage. I think that's unethical. It was unethical to do it in the first place. And what they haven't done is they haven't done what they're morally obligated to do, which is go and safely remove those mercury fillings. What we haven't talked about is the fact that if the same idiot that put the mercury filling in goes in and grinds it out, you're going to end up with a huge dose of mercury. And that has actually killed people. So you have to protect the airway and capture all of that mercury and those amalgam particles when you take those fillings out. The IAOMT has a protocol. It's available. Anybody wants to read it. I've got a video called Safer Amalgam Removal. You can watch that. It's about 20 years old, but it's, adequate. But there's better ways to do it today. But there's a lot of information out there. Is that you just are not going to get it from somebody that went to a dental school and learned the dogma of dentistry.
Yeah, it's something I try and tell, especially my clients as well. Trying to tell a lot of people is people seem to think like doctors and dentists through the board are just rock stars, and they listen to everything they say. But I always say to people, go and do your own research, because like for example, myself, and obviously you yourself, haven't got an agenda. I just want to be healthy. So you just try and tell people, go and look at all the research and actually understand it yourself, rather than just taking something at face value. Because the things you're talking about there, I've got family friends that are dentists, and I talk about fluoride now. It can't be that bad, and which we'll get into later on. It wouldn't be, otherwise they wouldn't use it. And I sit there and go, I don't think you understand. I think I've heard you talk before about in the US the reason it's used. Was it because the Army and Navy are all involved? I can't remember the exact quote you used. Aren't they all taught? Or aren't they funded by them or something like that to do the mercury in the teeth? Am I talking nonsense?
I think you switched from mercury to fluoride.
Oh,
the Army.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
yeah. The Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Public Health Service, and welfare are the biggest users of mercury. So in the United States, the biggest consumer of mercury are the military and the welfare programs. Right. So they're reluctant to address this issue. But as far as the fake program with fluoride, that actually, they don't put fluoride in the water. What they're putting in is hydrofluorosic acid, which is a man-made byproduct of making nuclear weapons originally, but now it comes from the phosphate fertilizer plants of all over the world. They put it in the waters of Ireland, some of England, and the vast majority goes into the United States and in our water supplies. And we buy it from other countries, which is moderately insane because it's a man-made molecule that sucks lead into the body. And so you read about Flint, Michigan with the high lead levels. Well, they're adding silica fluoride to the water of Flint, Michigan. They got cheap and didn't add the base to neutralize the acid. So the stuff went through and ate all the lines. Oh, great. Well, why are we putting that chelating agent in the water anyway? It's just insane. So anyway, I've said insane before. Have I said insane? Yeah. It's insane.
Just because I don't want to wind you up, right? Because we're going to move on to fluoride in a minute, and I know you've got so much to say on that. I just want to end with mercury, because that was my fault, because I sort of got a little bit mixed up with some of the things you said. But just out there, the mercury is not just into fillings; they're also putting it now into vaccinations. Well, it's been vaccinations for a while, and this is something that people need to stay away from. As you said, a lot of different diseases are. It's definitely involved in a lot of different diseases. What are things? So you mentioned there, people need to get it taken out. They've got to be very careful. They don't just go to the same guy that put it in. They need to be very careful about taking those mercury fillings out, because, as I did mention in your video, smoking teeth, it does show with every single bite of food, or if they're chewing gum, that mercury is being released into the body all the time, all day long. So it's something people do need to look into themselves to get removed, but they've got to be very careful about that. And I'd say go to a biological doctor maybe, or sorry, a biological dentist maybe, to get that done. Just really be careful with that. But what are the questions people should ask their dentists if the dentist says they should be using the mercury filling? What are something they should ask the dentist?
Well, I think the first question I'd ask is it, are you concerned at all about the mercury in my silver filling? And if they say no, leave. Because if they haven't bothered, to take the time to understand the issue, then you're basically going flying with a student pilot who doesn't know anything. So that's probably not a good thing to do if you want to live a long time. So that if they say, oh, there's no problem with that, leave. Because otherwise you've got to educate them. That's always a bad idea when you're trying to teach the pilot how to fly, is that the passenger needs to have confidence that the director of the flight is going to get you to your destination and not kill you on the way. And if your dentist is dismissive about the issue of mercury, that you're in the wrong airplane. So get off and find another airplane where somebody has bothered to educate themselves. There are a lot of organizations that teach dentists how to do this correctly, and physicians as well. And that in the United States and Europe, there's a organization called IAOMT, stands for International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. They have a whole program of accrediting dentists in safe amalgam removal. It's called SAFER, and go figure. And they have teach them how to encapsulate the filling and capture the vapor and the particulate with high volume vacuums and water spray, and protect the patient's airways. The throat has to be protected as well as the nose, so you don't inhale the fumes. When the dentists say, oh, this is a safe kind of mercury, what they're referring to the fact is that in liquid form, the mercury is not toxic. Well, it doesn't stay in liquid form. Is that anytime you heat liquid mercury, it becomes mercury vapor, and it becomes mercury vapor at room temperature. But when the drill touches it, the tip of the drill can be like, 400, 500 degrees. Well, all of a sudden, now you've got an aerosol of ground up mercury particles that go down into the lungs. They're respirable. They're little teeny pieces of amalgam, and mercury vapor. Well, that's the toxic form. So whereas liquid, relatively untoxic, as long as you don't vaporize it, drill on it, you're vaporizing it and particulating. So you got to stop, think about that, and capture all of that stuff and put it in a hazmat bag and send it off to the Sweden. Says it's unethical to recycle. So what they do is they do permanent storage. They collected all the mercury they found in their country, put it in containers that are to last 1,000 years, and they set it up to be able to transfer from one container to another in the next millennium, and put them in salt mines deep in the earth where it's 48 degrees, down where it's still vaporizing, but since it's in a sealed container, it's not vaporizing much. And that's the only ethical way they could figure it out. Once mercury's dug out of the ground, it's going to get into the environment unless we capture it and store it. And that's what the whole world should be doing. Unfortunately, it's just the Swedes have figured that out, and the rest of the people are still stuck in the denial phase.
I think I've heard you say before that there's no reason for man to be mining mercury, which I completely agree with you. And I mean, for someone, so if someone does have, lots of people I know have mouthfuls of mercury. If someone did want to stop the emission of mercury from their fillings, is there anything they can do apart from extraction, safe extraction?
Oh yeah, if you suck on an ice cube and lower the temperature, you're going to get that filling to emit less. It still leaks a little bit down around the zero temperature of an ice cube, but still it's going to emit less. And that a study by Magnus Nylander in Sweden showed that if you eat an egg yolk, say for instance you had a hot cup of coffee or tea, and that anything hot makes these fillings start to spew. And so if you finished a cup of tea and you say, oh, my fillings are spewing, well, you can breathe out through your mouth, and then you're just poisoning the person next to you. Or you can eat an egg yolk, and that the yellow in the egg yolk is sulfur, and so it combines with the filling and stops the emission temporarily until you have something else to eat. But you have techniques that will lower your exposure to mercury, but nothing's going to get rid of your exposure until you get rid of that time-release poison that's in your tooth. In the meantime, you can be very conscious of the fact that you don't chew gum, because when you chew gum, you make mercury come off all the time. Limit the number of times that you put your teeth together, and limit the amount of hot foods that you eat. And if you do eat something hot, immediately follow it with an ice cube or an egg yolk. How about that?
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of hassle, but yeah,
Well, yeah, get rid of the fillings.
Exactly, get rid of the fillings. And so if people have got rid of the fillings recently, or if they have still got mercury in their mouth, is there anything that they can ingest or take, or supplement-wise, they can take that chelates and binds to mercury and draws it out of the body?
Well, there is a wonderful new product that's called Initrix, Initrix. It's available on compassionate use in Europe, and we're working to bring it back worldwide. I took a lot of it when it was a food supplement, and it kept making so many people well that the FDA said, "Oh, that's got to be a drug, so you need to spend $1 billion on it." You can make it in your kitchen. It's two molecules of cysteine hooked to a benzoic acid molecule. And that is now a new drug that's been approved for compassionate use, and we're working on getting it approved, for all the people that need to get rid of mercury. And it is wonderful. It has no side effects. The 2.5 million doses were taken as a food supplement, and there were no adverse reports. And you could eat as much as you want. They cannot feed too much of it to a rat. The more of it you feed to a rat, the better the rat looks. So, they look like show rats with, beautiful hair and friendly dispositions. But anyway,
what's
go
the
figure.
name again? What's it called again?
It's Initrix, Initrix, or the other word is Emeramide, Emeramide.
Okay.
And there's a website, Emeramed. The company is called Emeramed. If you go emeramed.com, you'll go to their website, click on the button to get their newsletter, and you can watch it go through the long, laborious process. It started in 2000, and it's nearing completion. It's designated as an orphan drug because nothing else in the world will do what it does. It corrects mercury poisoning in a blink. They did an experiment with rats where they gave them a 5-fold lethal dose of mercury and by injection, and then and gave them ahead of time the Initrix and Irminix. Irminix is the name of it. And the 4 of the 6 rats that were injected with the mercury died. The 2 that did die would have survived if they'd followed up with a second dose, because the mercury came out over a long period of time, whereas the Irminix is only in the rat body for about 12 hours. Mm-hmm. So the injury occurred after 12 hours when the rat's body excreted. Humans, excrete it slower. So in humans, it's 24 hours. Right. So, if you took a tablet a day, if you're a dentist, get it and take a tablet a day every time you go to work, because even if you're the safest dentist in the world, you're getting exposed to mercury when you walk in that dental office. There's just no way that you can handle this stuff and not have a mess.
That's a market for you straight away. So what is it? How is it made? You said it was food. You had it in food supplement form before.
Well, it basically is if you know chemistry, benzoic acid is a 6-carbon ring, and I call that the ball and chain. So they basically Boyd took a ball and chain, and he put 2 grappling hooks out that hang out in the air that are exactly the same distance apart as mercury is found in the ground in cinnabar, with sulfur attached to it at 180 degrees. So he basically built a molecule that's dangling sulfur out there exactly where mercury wants it. And so mercury will let go of your nerve in order to get a hold of this molecule because it's energetically correct. And that's what we've seen. I've taken a bunch of it, and it basically solved the problem of mercury buildup in the tissues over my 30 some odd years of dentistry. Even though I was careful, I didn't know enough about it to be careful enough. Mm-hmm. You need to be in a spacesuit. You don't need to be in there in your smock. Smock is no protection whatsoever. It's like going into Chernobyl with a handkerchief.
So this is completely non-toxic in any amount, and you can actually have as much as you need.
Yes, that's true. And it's gone through 1 clinical trial on the mercury poisoned gold miners. The people that are making a mess out of the world, besides the dentists, are the gold miners in Central and South America. And how are they getting the mercury? They're importing it as bulk dental mercury. And it's not bulk dental mercury. It's barrels of mercury they're using to extract gold. And then when they're through with it, they put it on the campfire and blow it up in the atmosphere. So it's poisoning Amazon basin and running down into Chile and poisoning Peru. It's just insane what they're doing with mercury. They don't need to be allowed to do that. They can, but because they're making money getting gold out of the ground, the government likes that because now they're getting money from gold. So it continues. So it's
short-sighted. Money.
Nobody wants their country polluted. Nobody wants babies that are born with birth defects or old people that can't stand up and walk or think. Mm-hmm. But money is the goal, and they're getting the money.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, that's the story we've all heard before. So yeah, I just don't even know where to go with that. I mean, that seems like a bit of a standard occurrence these days with in terms of money, and then they're worrying about the effects of everything later on because it's okay, we'll clean it up later. It doesn't seem to work that way. Moving on to fluoride, David. This is a subject you're very passionate about. You've been in, obviously you've got your own film out there called Fluoridegate that I urge people to watch, and you've also been on another film that people can go on YouTube and watch. It's called The Great Culling, and it's the Great Culling of Our Water. It's on YouTube. I urge people to watch it. So, fluoride. Countries that have banned fluoride in the water are, as far as I'm aware, Norway, Sweden, China, Austria, Belgium, Finland, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, Hungary and Japan. Yeah, we've still got it, especially Ireland as well. You've got it in the water. So, quickly, what is the difference between naturally occurring fluoride and this fluoride? Well, we'll start with that because that's just something people need to understand.
Well, the naturally occurring fluoride is found in decomposed granite. And so when the Rocky Mountains eroded away, they ended up with decomposed granite in the soil of southern Colorado and Texas and Oklahoma. So wells in those areas have natural fluoride in it. It will cripple the people in Texas. China has the same problem. And they have a whole program to remove fluoride from their water and find good water for the people. And that was my first documentary. It's called China's Battle with Crippling Water. You can find that on my YouTube. And that natural fluoride will cripple you. It won't cripple you as rapidly as artificial fluoride, but it will cripple you nevertheless. And what it does, it accumulates in the bones because your body has no use for fluoride. Fluoride is basically a poison. So your body has to do something with it, so it parks it in the bone. In time, your bones become brittle and arthritic. And so for reasons that are not clear, it accumulates in the lower lumbar spine, right where your hips and your spine come together. And so these people in China end up bent over at 90 degrees because it hurts to stand up. Eventually, the fluoride causes the bone to expand, and it paralyzes their legs, so they can't move their legs. And they end up, a paraplegic on a piece of plywood the rest of their life. So that's what happens with natural fluoride. With artificial fluoride, it's at a slightly lower level, but like I said, that fluoride is higher absorption rate than calcium fluoride, much higher absorption rate, and it's an odd molecule. It's a man-made molecule of sand hooked with 6 molecules of fluoride, hydrofluosilicic acid. That extracts lead into those bones as well. So now you have 2 things in the bone, lead and fluoride. And it does the same thing that the natural fluoride. It accumulates in the lower lumbar spine and the joints. And so you end up with arthritic conditions, hip replacement, joints, bone fractures. Dental fluorosis is one of the things that's really obvious, where the teeth end up with white spots on it and that sort of stuff. So it's how do the teeth end up with spots on them? Because the child, as an infant, swallowed the poison, it circulated around their bloodstream and ended up poisoning the cells that were making the tooth. Well, you've got to be a dentist to believe the child can swallow a poison and somehow it found its way only to the tooth. If you were to slice that kid up and look, you'll find lesions in the brain, arteries, and kidneys, just like the rats. So it poisons whatever it comes in contact with. And we've got 60%, 41% of the children in the United States today have visible signs of fluoride overdose. That is insane. There is no reason for any child in the United States to have any sign of fluoride overdose. What other signs of fluoride overdose? Lower IQ.
Can I get into it? Yeah, go ahead.
Just like mercury, fluoride goes after nerves. And you end up with a neurologically impaired child. So, you wonder why it's so hard to teach children to read and write. And you get them up in the morning and you put 1,000 parts per million or 1,500 parts per million fluoride in their mouth. And then you wonder why they have trouble making the letters show up on the page. Stay away from neurotoxins. That's the bottom line.
No. I mean, you're talking about. I actually had that for quite some of my questions. That research has shown that fluoride lowers IQ, and the thing is, it's in the water. Obviously, dentists are watching your documentaries as well as doing my own research. Dentists say there's the reports are conclusive. Fluoride isn't toxic. It's perfectly safe. It strengthens the bones in your teeth. It helps us with our dental health. And everything you're saying is completely opposite to that. As it's been used before. I mean, I can't remember technically who said it, but I remember one of the quotes from your film saying, "Fluoride poisons enzymes and it's toxic in any amount. It eats through glass, steel, titanium, and concrete." And people will say, "Well, if it's so bad, the government wouldn't put it in the water and they wouldn't use it in the toothpaste." What would you say to that?
I think that's an odd attitude toward government because, our government used to bomb what country has been bombed 150 times with nuclear weapons? That would be the United States, that they were doing above ground nuclear testing clear up into the 60s when Linus Pauling made a big point about the strontium-90 ended up in all the children's bones. And so they said, well, maybe that's probably not the best idea. And they went to doing underground testing. But so believing that our government has our best interest at heart and is benign is sort of like, fantasy land. Is it our government does what's good for industry and the military. It doesn't do what's good for you. And so if there were any truth to what the dentists say, that they would be able to produce some scientific evidence where they studied exposure to fluoride and controlled for other elements such as arsenic and lead and showed that it didn't lower IQ. They don't have any studies like that. All the studies where the people were exposed to a reasonably high level of fluoride showed it damaged their IQ. And you can do the math, just work it backwards. If it causes a 10-point drop in IQ at 4 parts per million, it's going to cause a 2-point drop at 1 part per million. So it goes on. And so there are like 27 studies of humans showing that fluoride in waters lowered IQ. And so what do we get on the other side? We get denial. And this is like the trial I was giving you an example of before. Just because the defense attorney comes up with some other alternative explanation is not the same as putting an epidemiological study together with 200-300 million people in it. No, they don't have that. All they got is their lips, and they're moving them rapidly because that's what they're paid to do. They're in there as deniers of the injury that's been documented. That's what they do, and that's not science. You got to show me a study. Phyllis Mullinex took some rats that Pam Dembeston had caused just a little tiny bit of dental fluorosis and put them in a very sophisticated observation with cameras and computers recording their behavior, and rats with dental fluorosis behaved abnormally. So even just if you got a funny little spot on your tooth, if you're a rat anyway, you're not going to be a normal rat. And then they've got follow-up studies she did where they exposed the rats to fluoride and they behaved abnormally. So when you get rats, which are at least 20 times more resistant to fluoride than humans, and if you give them a exposure to fluoride and they behave abnormally, you can guarantee that human beings are behaving abnormally because of their exposure to fluoride. That's not open to speculation, but yet they would want to speculate. Oh, well, I think rats are probably very sensitive to fluoride. No, they're not. We can tell by how much it takes to kill them. It takes 100 milligrams per kilogram to kill half the rats. It takes 5 milligrams per kilogram to kill 100% of the people. So a rat is at least 20 times less sensitive to fluoride than humans, and they end up brain damaged. So what's the chances a baby not end up brain damaged if you put it on tap water formula? Is that human breast milk has almost no fluoride in it. You can poison mother nearly to death with fluoride, and it doesn't come out in her breast milk. And yet, when you make up formula with powdered formula with tap water, the baby's getting many-fold higher fluoride than is known to harm that infant. And you can tell it because their teeth end up with spots on them.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, there's got a few different ways. There's a few things I just want to ask you here because you've mentioned a few different questions that I had there ready for you. First of all, fluoride as well. You talk about it affecting IQ, and we've gone into that, but it's what the Nazis used to put in their water supply to control the people, correct?
I've heard that. I haven't. I did check with a friend of mine that was in Auschwitz and had the scars on his head for where they hit him with the axe handle. And he said, no, they didn't have to. He said machine guns and German shepherds and Nazis were enough to keep them under control. Right. Whether it's true or not is unimportant. Yeah. The fact that it damages IQ is proven.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And then you're talking there about the fluoride. So it's not just in the toothpaste. They're now adding it to baby formula and it's ending up in cereals. So people, especially children, I mean, most adults eat cereal because they don't know better at the moment, just because of the way that people think breakfast is a cereal example. So they're getting hit in all different manners. So I mean, is it obviously the more you have of it, the quicker the accumulation builds, or can your body detoxify it quite quickly as well?
The body is only able to get rid of about half if you've got good kidneys. If you do not have good kidneys, you get rid of less than that, and that's why the National Academies of Science says that the at-risk population are people with impaired kidneys, as well as, the people who are exposed to the levels that are legal in the United States, which is 4 parts per million, which is the level that crippled people in China. So that if you have a really good diet and you're able to excrete only about half of it. So if you do the math, eventually your bones end up, and that's where it gets parked, is your bones, and your bones end up high enough that they end up brittle, and you end up with hip replacements or arthritic joints and fragile bones, and that's the scenario that you can expect because of the fluoride in the drinking water, because you cannot avoid it, because it ends up in your beer, it ends up in your coffee, it ends up in your tea, it ends up even in your Coca-Cola. If they make the Coca-Cola up with the tap water, yeah. Sure. And that's why was it in the cereal? Because any food that is dehydrated, if you take the Post Toasties or whatever, you crunch it up and turn it into a Cheerio or whatever, and then you suck the water out. Well, the fluoride stays behind. So that you make it up with tap water that's fluoridated, you end up with fluoridated cereal. We've measured, I think, 10 parts per million in Cheerios, and Fruit Loops were 3, and on and on. So the really high levels are in instant iced tea, like Lipton instant iced tea.
Yeah, I was going to mention that to you. I think you found a lady that had a really bad reaction to that. Is that correct?
Just exactly like the people in China. She ended up with lower lumbar spine was arthritic, and her back hurt all the time. And then finally, the doctor took an X-ray, saw the real white blob of bone around the lower lumbar spine, and figured out that was fluoride. And she was drinking a gallon a day of Lipton iced tea. That was her beverage. She liked the Lipton iced tea. So, hey, the ice was okay, but the instant iced tea, and she was in a fluoridated community, so she got a little fluoride off that community, and you got a lot of fluoride off the Lipton iced tea. Any instant iced tea. I'm not picking on Lipton. Any instant iced tea. Black tea has fluoride. Green tea has fluoride. Chamomile tea has fluoride. So those are the 3 high fluoride teas. Brick tea, which is in Africa, also has high levels of fluoride. So we're exposed to fluoride from lots of different sources. You just don't need to have the government buying it from another country and put it in the water. That's the insane part. Mm-hmm. Then you could really reasonably avoid it. But if somebody is bringing it in from other countries and dumping it in by the freighter load, it's huge amounts. They use 500,000 tons a year. Half a billion, 500,000. Yeah, 500,000 tons a year.
This it can also be found listening to some more of your research and some more of your videos. You also talk about how it's found in pesticides and how it's found in Prozac. Now, why would it be there for people? Why would they use fluoride in pesticides, and why would they use it in Prozac, and what dangers comes out of that?
The reason it's used in pesticides is because it kills bugs, right. And so it's a very powerful pesticide.
So it's toxic.
Yeah, it's toxic.
Yeah. Right.
And so it ends up, well, what kind of things do they use it on? They use it on wine. We've measured non-organic wines here in the United States that had up to 8 parts per million fluoride. And so where's that from? Well, it's from those airplanes that are flying over the two wings that are spraying something out. Well, they're spraying out fluoride.
Madness.
So that's what the problem is. The EU has set a standard for pesticide in wine. All the pesticides combined can't be above half a part per million. What if they end up with a wine that's too high? Well, they sell that to Trader Joe's in the United States because we don't have any standard for pesticide in wine, so they can unload their toxic wine on us. Thank you very much.
I was just thinking, the thing is about that is that I always, because I interview quite a few people from the States as well as England, around the world, but the thing is, people don't understand it's a global market. So when people, for example, it's about the same with GM food, when people are buying sweet potatoes over here and they're coming from the US, that's the thing, you need to understand where they're coming from, because they might be buying it in the UK, but we have wine here from California, we have wine here from all over the United States. So people need to understand that it's not just the things that they're buying, or it's just for you guys in the US, it's prevalent here as well. And in Prozac, just talk about why it's in Prozac and what I remember Mike Adams talking about I think it was the Sandy Hook killers, the episode there, how the fluoride can actually, with psychedelic drugs, really influence the way your brain works.
That's why it's in those drugs. Fluoride is in almost all your neuropsychiatric drugs. Prozac, the diet drug that ruined hearts, fenfluramine, fluoxetine is Prozac. When you hear the word flu, how about fluoroquinone, like Cipro? When you hear flu in the word, it's like flux. That's fluoride. So when welders end up fluoride poisoned because they're using a fluoride flux on their welding, and then they end up inhaling that when they weld in high temperature. So they end up inhaling it. So they end up later in their life, they end up with arthritic symptoms from inhaling the flux. So if you read on Cipro, which is the fluoroquinone, it's a very effective antibiotic, but read on it. It says not for use for more than 2 weeks because it will poison you. And so that they know that these fluorides are available, and they do accumulate in critical organs, which are basically your joints. If you don't have really good kidneys, that's going to accumulate more rapidly. So, don't swallow fluoride. That's the bottom line, is that the fluoride's a poison and you don't need it. Your body has no use for it. If you brush your teeth with it, it'll knock down tooth decay a little bit because it makes the germs in your teeth sick. Well, use baking soda and salt. You can put that in your chocolate chip cookies and it doesn't make you sick. So, use something that kills germs but doesn't kill kids. That's how logic is that? I mean, that's not that hard to figure out. If it comes with a skull and crossbone on it and it says keep out of reach of children, I recommend that you keep it out of reach of children.
That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, this is something I always say to my clients, is that it comes in a container, a big skull and crossbones on it, saying poisonous in any amount, and yet you're putting it on your toothpaste every day and it accumulates. And this is one of the things I say that people don't seem to realise. So it's something that people need to understand a bit more, because you've been a dentist yourself. They say that fluoride strengthens your teeth, but there's actually been studies that show it doesn't actually strengthen teeth. It makes them more brittle. It might make them bigger, but it makes them more brittle and prone to breaking. Is that correct?
That's fracture, yes, and attrition is the term of fluoritic teeth, or teeth with dental fluorosis, wear down rapidly. In my China's battle with crippling water, in my movie, one guy smiles at the camera. I think he's 39 years old, and his teeth are worn off to nubs. They're like a quarter-inch tall, and they're all black and brown because they are fluoritic teeth, but they wear rapidly. And that's you think making enamel harder is a good idea. It makes it brittle. God designed the enamel properly. That fluoride makes it abnormal. It makes it brittle. And so it abrades and wears away rapidly, and it fractures easily. Same thing with your bones. Your bones don't need fluoride. It makes them brittle. your bones need calcium and magnesium, and that and fluoride accumulates on the calcium and magnesium in your bones, taking it away from the bone and attaching it to a poison. So that makes the bone unhealthy and brittle.
Yeah, okay. And so for people, for people who are using fluoride toothpaste, there's loads of different options you can actually use now. Like you said, baking soda, bicarbonate, with salt, but you can use coconut oil. There's loads of different options on the market. You can actually go and just look for a toothpaste that doesn't have fluoride in it. For people wanting to detox their body of fluoride, what can you suggest?
Calcium, magnesium, vitamin C, and iodine. That I had met a guy at a meeting in Los Angeles at the Metropolitan Water District. Kathy Thiessen was speaking about the National Academy of Science. I talked about poison babies, and he was filming it. And he came up afterwards and he says, "I think I have fluoride poisoning. What's the antidote?" And Dr. Thiessen and I both said simultaneously, calcium, magnesium, vitamin C, and selenium, and iodine. And so, and he went home and he gathered together those ingredients. And he said, wait, let me write it down. And calcium and magnesium, vitamin C, and selenium and iodine, and about 200 to 400 micrograms of selenium. And the iodine, almost unlimited amounts that you can. The recommended dose is way too low. 134 micrograms is not enough to, even keep the kids from getting goiter. So, you need milligram doses of iodine, not micrograms. And over time, that your body will be able to encapsulate or excrete. What happens when you first start taking iodine is some people get itchy all over. And that's because of the bromine and the chlorine that have attached to iodine receptor sites. And when you have enough adequate iodine, it drives them off. And so that all of a sudden you end up with a purge of your body of these abnormal. Your body doesn't need bromine, and you get bromine in everything from bread to your upholstery. Every time you sit on foam cushions, they puff a bunch of bromine because that's their fire retardant that they, in their great wisdom, put in all the foam cushions. So now every time you sit down, you get a nice dose of bromine. Thank you very much.
Fair enough. That's awesome. That's really great information, and people can take that on board and really use that, which is really good. So just two more questions I got for you, because I know we keep you for quite a while now. Just two more questions, and we'll let you go. I know you've got a busy day. First one is, if this is in your world common knowledge, and all the studies are there to show that mercury and fluoride are just incredibly toxic and shouldn't be used, why are dentists still using them and promoting them?
They're lied to by their trade association. That dentists are good people, but when you're 21 years old and you go to dental school, that you rely upon that person at the front of the class. You think they've done their homework, they've done their due diligence, and they have not. What they're doing is they're telling you what the trade association wants them to. And so that you cannot listen without a filter to the people in the front of the class, that they are not telling the truth. And you can tell that they're not telling the truth if you do your homework, because you will find more or less continuously there are where they tweak the response to fit the dogma, if you will. Does mercury come out of the fillings? Well, it's a safe kind. It's not enough to hurt you. Well, wait a minute. How much comes out?
Substantiate that.
Yeah. So they don't want to answer that next question, because everybody that's answered that next question, how much comes out, whether we do it by measuring or whether we do it by calculating, whatever it is, it's going to be more than causes harm, because minute amounts cause harm. So the amount coming out causes harm. Then if you go look at dental personnel, this is why Norway banned it, is that the dentists were saying, oh, it's the safe kind, blah, blah, blah. And when they measured the dental assistants that were working in their offices with the safe kind, they were poisoned. They were injured. And they had birth defect children as a result of that. That means it is a crime against the employee. And I don't know how they can get away with it in countries that allegedly support the human rights. But it certainly, you're an 18-year-old girl, you want to get a job The dentist says, hey, I need somebody to wash dishes and help hand me some instruments. Come on and work in my office. And you just took a job that's going to sterilize 40% of those women. They will not be able to conceive babies. And if they do, it may be a tragedy worse than conception. And so how is that allowed to happen? It's like the unethical experiments they did in Portugal, where they poisoned the children with mercury fillings. And that the contract that we had in English said that we will correct any problem that occurs. The contract that they gave the orphans in Portuguese said, you're on your own. You can't have two contracts that say different things. That's called fraud. And that's our United States National Institute of Health that's doing that. And people need to yell at them. Hey, get over here and take care of the injuries that you caused and do it safely. You can't have the same idiots that put it in take it out because they don't know anything. And by now, those dentists are impaired. So if we measured them, they are not doing a good job. They're not as good as when they graduated from school, even if they've got gray hair.
I was just about to say, it baffles me that people cannot, if they're into health and into helping people, how they cannot do the research themselves and listen and learn. And I just don't understand how they can be so, so blinded or blind to it, blind to the truth. How does it? I don't know how they get like that. It just, for someone like yourself, comes out and speaks, and you've got 46 or 47 years of behind you in research, and you've been doing this for so many years, and as well as other people, and there's so much conclusive evidence. I mean, how can they bury their head in the sand, or how can they miss it? I don't understand.
Arrogance. Arrogance is the word. Is it because they went to school and that the person in the front of the class told them something and they very carefully wrote down in their notes and memorized it and answered it on the test? They believe that what they're saying is true. That's not correct. That's not how, the science works. Science is a question of numbers. And so that you need to know how to ask about the numbers. But if you ask questions in dental school, they say you're not a very good student. They chase you out of the classroom. They say, oh, you're just being pesky. No, if you don't know the answer to that, you shouldn't be in the front of the class.
Yeah, I just want to know the truth, right? I just want to know the truth.
Answer the question.
Yeah, no, that's why I say practical experience as well. Sometimes I think it's Paul Check who talks about intellectual. We live in a world where people just believe what's on paper rather than going out and experiencing themselves, or actually looking for themselves, which seems to be so true, unfortunately. But it's something I always try to get people to learn. It's like, listen to your body, go out and do the research yourself, because not everything you read, trust me on this, and watch is true. You need to go and listen to people and then go and experience it for yourself. The last question I'd ask you, David, before we let you go, is for people who want to improve their dental health, what I'd say some very simple things that you can do. If it's to say your top 5 things that people can do to improve their dental health without obviously mercury and fluoride, what would they be? I'd send them off to watch my video called Bad Bugs, and go get an oral irrigator, and don't just brush your teeth. What you need to do is to knock the scum off your teeth, do something in between your teeth, whether it's a toothpick or a brush or a floss. You need to knock the gook out from between your teeth, and then don't quit. You're not done. Hook up your water pick, put something in the water pick that kills germs, and hose them out. And that, it's just like washing your car. You got to stir it up all over and then wash it off when you're done. And you rinse all the germs down the drain. The germs that are going to eat the bone around your teeth are swimmers. If you change all the fluid around your teeth for something like salt water as opposed to saliva, you're going to make it an inhospitable environment, and that you're going to get rid of most of those germs. You're not going to sterilize the mouth. That's not possible. On the other hand, you can get rid of the kind of germs that you don't want in there, because they're very, very fragile, actually, but people don't do it. And so, I can do it for you, or you can do it yourself. But I wrote a book on it, How to Save Your Teeth, and it's all about, stirring it up and hosing it off. And you can measure these guys. We used a microscope. It's really easy. That all the bad guys run away and try to hide when you look at them. So, you want to basically end up with germs that don't go away and try to hide. Tooth decay is a different program. Tooth decay is caused by eating sugar and leaving scum on your teeth. So you've got 3 choices. You can get rid of your teeth, you can get rid of sugar,
or you can keep the scum off your teeth, or you can do a combination of all three of those. So don't eat sugar. I just quit eating sugar. Sugar, I don't need to eat sugar. I just quit eating sugar. So, no bit.
Yeah, I completely understand. Sugar is terrible for your teeth. For people who have been told they need a root canal, maybe it's a conversation topic for, maybe it's a question for another conversation. But for people who have been told they need a root canal, what would your be advice if you give it very quickly?
I'd extract the tooth and clean the infection out around it. The reason for a root canal is a dead tooth. A dead tooth is like a dead person. So what the dentist will do, they'll embalm the tooth with embalming materials and leave it in the mouth. Well, when we take those teeth out and analyze them with DNA and microscopically, they're all infected. 90% of them have copious quantities of abnormal anaerobic germs living in the tubules, releasing hugely toxic exotoxins on about 4 out of 5 teeth. So, you're dealing with some very serious issues here if you keep dead teeth in your body. If you had a dead toe, every physician on the planet will say, get rid of that. If you had a dead tooth, the dentist say, oh, I can save that for you. No, you can't. It's dead. Dead things need to go where dead things go. Don't let somebody embalm a dead tooth and leave it in your jawbone. They will do exactly what all other dead things do. They accumulate and fill up with bacteria and then leak their exotoxins all over your body. So just say no to dead teeth. And the solution is to keep your teeth alive. Don't let cavities grow. If you have a cavity that's a pinhead size, go get it fixed. Don't let them put mercury in it, but go get it fixed.
100%. That's brilliant. I think we have to get you on again to talk a bit more about the dangers of root canals and how people don't actually understand how relevant and how important their teeth are to their overall health. And it's something that needs to be discussed in greater length a lot more. The teeth always seem to get sort of like marginalised, where I think that people they need to understand how important teeth are. But anyway, David, thank you so much for coming on. You've been brilliant to talk to, absolute fantastic guest. And as I said before, hopefully we get you on again. Hope we haven't taken you up too much time and made your brain fry. So thanks very much, David, for that.
Happy to share the wisdom of my research.
No worries. Speak to you soon, David. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
So guys, there we have it. That was the interview with Dr. David Kennedy, all about fluoride and mercury. I'm sure that will have opened your eyes to a very different point of view, a very different way of thinking about fluoride and mercury. And, well, in my opinion, if you don't want to poison yourself, if you don't want to toxify your body, if you don't want to poison your enzymes, if you don't want to calcify your pineal gland, if you don't want to have off-gassing in your mouth, then you want to stay away from these two very toxic substances. Mercury as well gets put in vaccines. So anyway, that was Dr. David Kennedy's interview, guys. I really hope you learned something. I really hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, as always, send them to me at send them to me at ryan@reviveyourself.co, or as I said before, if you need to chat about any health issues, head over to www.reviveyourself.co. Okay, guys, and next week's interview is going to be with Leah Keith on the vegetarian myth. Those of you that know Leah know how passionate she is about this topic, and this is not a podcast that's going to be against vegans or against vegetarians. It's just her point of view, what she's experienced in her life. So I'd ask, like with everything, try and avoid the dogma and just try and keep your mind open to the possibilities of just different people that experience different things. Maybe what you've experienced isn't always true for everyone. So it's going to be a really good interview. Leah, we don't just go into food aspects of veganism or vegetarianism, we go into economical aspects. We also go into the land, how it's affecting the world, agriculture. So it's a really good interview, guys. Okay, so look out for that one. I really can't wait to get your opinions on that one either. But as always, guys, stay happy, stay healthy, have a great week. Any questions, I said before, send them over to me, and I'll see you next time. See you later, guys. Take care.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.